Do you think this illegal immigration crisis is just a problem at the border? Try your own backyard.
Not right. Now billions of dollars want to be borrowed from the White House to help feed and house them. What about the kids here, in our neighborhood, in our country?
Well, the crisis at the border, not staying at the border anymore. A report the administration is asking military bases across the U.S. to help provide housing for illegal immigrant children. Now, these are the same military bases that Montel Williams wanted to use, remember, to help our vets, to spread it out, to get them care. For now, for illegals. All right, the former Nixon Reagan advisor, Pat Buchanan, who says, you know, we all got to wake up here. Pat, he's author of so many books, but this latest one, to my money, is the best of them all. The Greatest Comeback. It's an inside account of the 1968 presidential march of one Richard Nixon. You got to read it because actually great behind-the-scenes dirt, too, which I always admire. Patrick, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
What do you make of this? Use the hospitals that are out there, the military facilities, for these 50,000 plus.
You know, it reminds me, I think it was 1980 with Jimmy Carter and the Marielitos.
Remember that?
They poured in from Cuba.
Where did a lot of them go?
Arkansas, Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
You know, and that was an issue on which a presidency could turn. This is metastasizing into an issue on which a candidate, I think, running for the Republican nomination, if he laid out a program not only with border security, but dealing with Mexico and dealing with these folks who send these refugees and all the rest of it, and a whole program dealing with the immigration policy in this country and its character and composition 20 years from now based on immigration, I think he would have an issue on which a majority of the country would take a hard look at him for president of the United States. It is that big an issue right now and becoming bigger, and I don't see any way of it going away right now. Neil.
You know, you're clearly an expert, a pretty good historian too, but as you know, I play one on TV. Right. So here's my crackpot theory on this, Pat. If you don't say it's a problem, if you don't use terms like illegal, and a compliant mainstream media doesn't use terms like illegal, and you present this in a sympathetic way, not as a crisis, but as something that Republicans are making a big deal about, the crisis disappears. The problem for the president goes away. What do you think of that?
I don't think so. For this reason, it is a crisis to the media. You've seen buses stopped in California. You see folks on the border. You see folks talking to the media.
Yeah,
and the press.
They haven't ripped him for not going to the border. Some of them have mentioned
Obama is this. He ain't going to be on the ballot next time. I do think this is going to bring him down in the polls fairly dramatically because he comes off as someone who. I mean, why is he not down at the border? I still don't understand it. You got that picture of him shooting
He's not
pool.
in the photo ops, didn't you?
Well, I was a communications director, as I've mentioned, for the Greatest Communicator, the Great Communicator, and I would tell him, Mr. President, I know we made an original decision, but look at the way you're being hammered across the board here. The American people are complaining. The media are complaining. Why don't we, you know, call an audible and go down to the border and ask for the money, say, here's why we need it. I mean, go ahead and do it and change.
And visuals count. I was thinking of you, not in this book, but when you talk about Ronald Reagan wanting to be right by the Berlin Wall to say, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, or 2 decades earlier, John Kennedy choosing that same venue to make his pitch about freedom. So obviously location, photo ops, those kind of things matter. And it mattered to him in the case of being there during Hurricane Sandy. What's the difference here?
Well, you know, it mattered to him then, and it mattered to him. I thought when he went out to Tucson, when the Congresswoman had been shot. And he walked up there and delivered that speech and said, let's stop blaming each other for this. It was brilliant. It was beautiful. I said, he's acting like president of all of us.
And it was the best of all of his qualities.
It was wonderful. I mean, because he walked out there and people were taking advantage of it, gun control and all the arguments starting. And he did a great job. And he's capable of doing that. I don't know why.
So why don't you think he is? I mean, we got to this, and I was asking you this about your Nixon book, that the stubborn streak in Nixon, I won't do that. I won't, down to some silly stories in there I won't give away. But all presidents have a degree of stubbornness in them and all. But this president is particularly stubborn on things they say he has to do, whether it's firing Kathleen Sebelius until well after the fact, or going down to the border in the middle of a crisis.
There's an element of obduracy. You're exactly right.
Don't use big words here, Pat. This isn't crossfire. Those days are gone.
That's a second-rate word there.
Right.
But that is exactly what I mean. I was talking on radio with someone today. I said, I don't understand it because I'm sure I've been in Roosevelt rooms in these meetings. And people, chief of staff will speak up and say, look, sir, I think, you know, your ideas are good, but I think we have to move on this. I really feel it's important.
But when does it come to that? Because I also hear stories of yes men, and the president makes it clear he's in a foul mood or something's not going his way. They tiptoe around like the boss doesn't want to do this. But who's the brave soul who comes forward and say, boss, you don't do this, it's going to be ugly? Well,
you know what, Nixon, let me tell you about him. You'd go in there and you'd say that I'm not going to do this and that. And then a couple hours later, he would say, why do you think we ought to do this? But he would get through to him, and Nixon was flexible in that sense. And I don't understand it because the president's got to see himself being hurt. But as I say,
But who's doing that in this White House? I don't see Jarrett telling him to get to the border.
Well,
I don't see
apparently Jarrett was the one that told him not to go, wasn't she?
Right. So
well, okay, she's got a vested interest in her.
He's got pretty keen political instincts himself. He wouldn't have gotten to where he is today without him. Every president, I think it applies to, regardless of whether you like them or dislike them or their intellect. So he didn't get here accidentally. So I'm thinking he must realize, all right, there's a building storm on this, but maybe his staff has told him it's only a building storm on the right. You can ride this out. It's nothing like Bush and Katrina. There aren't a bunch of cameras at the border right now. Just let it ride.
You get a Democratic congressman saying it's Katrina?
Yeah, but not every Democratic congressman.
But it's all over the television. I mean, I've seen that picture of him shooting pool, and everybody is picking it up. Again, it's simply the ability to change.
This is him shooting pool with the governor of Colorado on the eve of the visit, right?
And drinking beer. And look, and I can't understand why. I mean, when you see all this, he's got people that are monitoring the media. He understands this. He has to. It's all over the newspapers, and not only, you know, the conservative press, that why he won't do that. I mean, why not?
Do you think he's
what
detached?
Is the argument for not?
You've touched on this.
What is he afraid of?
JFK was very eloquent, but he would not get in the middle of things that were in the heat of the moment. And some criticized him at the time for being a little too put offish or distant. But he really wasn't. But what about this
Nick
president?
Katzen back down to face down George Wallace in the schoolhouse door, and I'll stay up here in Washington.
I won't go down myself.
Exactly. But no, this is his kind of moment. As you mentioned, you know, with the Tucson thing, and there was a terrible thing, but nobody really expected him to have to go to Tucson, and he went ahead and did it.
I think every president who risks doing things that look risky are richly rewarded for it.
They are.
And the Tucson thing was a very good example you mentioned.
But this is a president who takes risks. I mean, I've always seen him that. He's the president.
I know he's got it in him.
Really, he's got it in him. He deals in images and symbols, and he's got good wit, and he's a fine speaker. And this is an occasion where he could go saying, let's pull together on this. We didn't know this was happening, and we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Do the right thing. And some people.
The thing like Gerald Ford with the pardon, and every single aide said, don't even do it, don't even do it. There's going to be disaster. He did it. There were political consequences for it, but he said it was the right thing to do.
Right thing. And let me tell you, the day he said goodbye to me, you'll have to leave, I told him, as a Mr. President, history's going to say you did the right thing here, you know, and I think they really have. But it was a big thing to do and the right thing to do. I think people recognize it. I don't understand why, after a couple of days, the president's not down there at the border.
It is a mystery. Pat, you might have a future at this political analysis.
Yeah, I think they're starting up a show called Crossfire, and we're going to get it working.
You're on your way, young man.
You can come on.
This is the latest book. He's like the Stephen King of these things. He keeps churning them out, one better than the other.